We all have things that we just know that we are right about. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, deep down in our bones, we know we are right and others are wrong. As a newer St. Louisan, I've figured out that there's an ongoing argument in this city over who's right, that nearly everybody has strong opinions about. It's something that tells me a little bit about who you are, depending on how you fall. It divides neighborhoods and families at Thanksgiving. And it's this question right here: which grocery store is the best? Where do you shop? See, in Denver, we had a couple options. Here, there's all sorts of options. You know, there's Dierberg's and Schnucks and Aldi and Trader Joe's and Straub's and Fresh Time and Target and Walmart, and you name it, all of these things. There's so many local options, and we all have our opinions about each of those options. You know, you might think Dierberg's is high-end, or Schnucks is where you find the best produce. You know, that Walmart has the best home delivery. Trader Joe's has the really healthy and unique stuff. And then there's Aldi. Nothing really prepared me for Aldi. We didn't have it where I lived. And so, you know, a while back, I'm like, I'm going to go check this out. I'm an adventurous person. I like to live dangerously. So, you know, I go to Aldi and I pull on the cart rack to get a cart. Nothing. Doesn't come. And I'm like, what's going on? And I realize it's like the luggage carts at the airport, you know, that take quarters. And of course, I don't have a quarter because it's not 1998. And I just kind of look around lost for a minute before I finally bummed a cart off of a guy who was leaving, you know, a true hero in my book, sir. So I finally get in the store to do my shopping. And then you're probably thinking, well, did he know about the other thing? Absolutely did not. Sure didn't know about the other thing. Didn't bring any bags to put my groceries in. You know, they were just rolling around in the trunk. I barely survived the experience, but that's grocery shopping in St. Louis. Where are the Aldi folks at here? Where's the Aldi crew? Okay, a strong showing. You know, what about Dierberg's devotees? Okay, Schnucks, we're the Schnucks crew. Yeah, some vocal reinforcement down front here. I like that. Something else? Anyone something else? Okay. You know, we've made our choices. We know the best place to go, and we love being right about it, don't we? Because we just love to be right in general about everything. The feeling of being right, we dig it, right? Not just with our grocery store, but with our faith, our politics, our finances, our parenting, our favorite TV shows, our favorite restaurants, right? Most of us are fairly confident that our way of thinking and living is the best way. We've built lives around all of these opinions that we've put into practice. And as we've had to defend, you know, these opinions with others and share them with others, we tend to just become more and more confident that we are right. But what if that's not always a good thing? In Scripture, we're going to dive in today and find that the need to be right often does not come from a place of faith. That it pushes out higher values in our lives. It stunts our pursuit of whole life. And that may seem counterintuitive to hear in a church, in a place, a community where we're known for our strong, firm convictions. But stick with me here. And more importantly, stick with Paul in his letter to 1 Corinthians. He has a ton that he's going to unpack for us here today. He says, I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree with one another in what you say, and that there would be no divisions among you, but that you'd be perfectly united in mind and thought. My brothers and sisters, some from Chloe's household, don't know who Chloe is, but she must be a believer, a member of the church. Some from Chloe's household have informed me that there are quarrels among you. What I mean is this: one of you says, I follow Paul. Another, I follow Apollos. Still another, I follow Cephas, Peter. Still another, I follow Christ. Is Christ divided? Was Paul crucified for you? Were you baptized in the name of Paul? I thank God that I did not baptize any of you except Crispus and Gaius. So no one can say that you were baptized in my name. Yes, I also baptized the household of Stephanas. Beyond that, I don't remember if I baptized anyone else. I love the stream of consciousness here. For Christ did not send me to baptize, but to preach the gospel, not with wisdom and eloquence, lest the cross be emptied of its power. Paul here, as he unpacks this for us, he lays out a really amazing vision of what it means to live as the people of God. To have no divisions, to not let any personalities, no cult of personality, leaders or celebrities pull us into different factions, into different groups, but to let our faith in Jesus unite us. That regardless of what we have in common or don't have in common, to let that common faith in Jesus be our unifying factor that bonds us together as brothers and sisters. It's a beautiful image of the church. But it's also a tall order. And we've failed miserably in that regard. Christians have let all sorts of differences drive wedges between us, right? We've fractured into thousands upon thousands of denominations around the world, each of us convinced that we're right. Everybody else is wrong. I love this meme that I saw this week. It's a map of Christian church, movements throughout history, and it's supposed to be a new member class, and the leader says, this is where our movement came along and finally got the Bible right, right here at the end. And we're all kind of a part of this. We all think we're kind of nailing it. Everybody else before us and whatever else, they don't really have the full picture. And don't get me wrong, denominations, they do a lot of good in this world. But all of these splits, all of those branches and forks, they're evidence of a deeper problem. And it extends way beyond our faith life. In every area of life, we naturally divide up, humans do, into tribes, into factions and groups. We gravitate toward people that agree with us and that can validate that we're right over against those other people, those wrong people, right? And we make rightness our fellowshipping and unifying factor and our disunifying factor. It draws the battle lines between us and others in spite of what Paul is teaching us here in 1 Corinthians. And I get it. You may think, okay, but doesn't truth matter? Right? Doesn't, God call us to stand up for truth and reject falsehood? If we just say, cool, whatever, believe whatever you want to, right? If we compromise and cave in on truth, then what would we even have? If we sacrifice that, would we have anything anymore? Any depth or substance that we could claim as the church, right? And if we do that, wouldn't we just be like the salt that's lost its saltiness, good only to be thrown out and trampled? Absolutely. I firmly believe that bad doctrine hurts people, leads them astray. Good doctrine brings life because it points people in the right place. It's not truth that's the problem. It's our need that we all have to be right. This deep emotional need that we have to win. And to let that part of us into the driver's seat of our lives, it comes at a high cost. A little bit about me. I've learned that I have a strong legalistic streak. I like to check all the boxes and do all the things right. And, at one point in my life, this manifested as an obsession with politics. And so I just began consuming tons of political media and listening to lots of talk radio, hours and hours. And not that those things are wrong in and of themselves. Certainly, I think it's great to engage in the political process and that we get a voice. But I was eating that stuff up. And the more that I consumed, the more convinced I was that I was right, everybody else was wrong, that I knew how society and everybody else should be acting. If we want to go forward, my way would be the best way to move forward, and that nobody else really saw things as well as I did. And it became harder and harder for me, the more I consumed, to even imagine taking a contrary opinion. How could people even coherently think differently, right? And proving others wrong, swatting down straw man arguments, that became a source of pride for me. My identity was caught up in being right. Kind of like Oscar from The Office. Any Office fans in the room? Yeah, the people that are doing TV right there. Oscar's known for his favorite word, which is actually. Because Oscar loves to chime in, to correct, and to give the additional info. Actually, let me correct you here. Let me share the full story. He loves to be right. He gets a huge kick out of it. You can tell it's a part of his identity. And you know what? There is an Oscar in all of us. There's a part of being right that we all dig. It's kind of a drug to us. And in the end, I'm not even entirely sure. I was thinking about it this week. What is it about rightness that has such a gravitational pull for us that makes us feel that way? And I'm not even entirely sure, but I know that it does make us feel that way. And I know that it gives us feelings of power and of security. I mean, just think about in an argument when you know that you've outmaneuvered someone, you've got them dead to rights, you've won the argument. That's a powerful feeling, is it not? I mean, to know that you're the winner, right, feels good. And it feels secure and safe to think I'm on stable ground. They're the ones that have to change, not me. See, throughout our lives, it's like we build a structure in our minds, a mental house to live in of sorts. And it has foundation and pillars and supports, and all of it is pieced together by our opinions, by the things that we think we're right about, and we construct this mental house. And it could be a house of steel, very sturdy, could be a house of cards, but you know what? We build it one way or another. And we don't really like the idea that thinking the house that we've built for ourselves might not be stable, that it could have inferior materials or be put together poorly, right? We don't like that because then we would have to tear down and rebuild, and that would be a lot of work. And change is always scary and hard, and it opens us up to be vulnerable. And so we don't like that. We would much rather just validate that what we've already built in our lives, in our minds, is right. And that's what I did. I found myself an echo chamber to validate. But you know what? The problem is what the echo chamber did to me. It slowly, I caught myself being arrogant, unkind, being a poor listener. I became terrible at ownership. You know, these political talking heads, they hardly ever apologize, and so neither did I. Never would admit that I was wrong. And that attitude began to seep in and filter down into other areas of my life, so that regardless the relationship or the subject matter, I had to be right. And I realized at a certain point that I became like the Pharisee in Jesus' parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. You probably know the one. Two men go up to the temple to pray. One, a lowly, despised tax collector who prays in humility, and the other, a self-righteous Pharisee. And I realized I become the Pharisee. God, I thank you that I am right and that I know the right stuff, and even everybody else is wrong. I'm not like all those other stupid people over there. And it reminds me of this quote. I think this is so relevant. Commit this to memory. You cannot be spiritually mature while remaining emotionally immature. Can't be spiritually mature while remaining emotionally immature. I'd realized that my need to be right had stunted my faith growth. It had pushed out the higher values. I had no room for them in my life, just like with the Pharisees. Jesus, he once criticized the Pharisees for living a faith of expert knowledge, but at the same time neglecting the weightier matters. And we think, what could possibly be weightier to God than knowing the truth and being a warrior for truth in a culture that is deeply entrenched in falsehood? And Paul says there is something, and it's this. If we skip ahead in 1 Corinthians, he says, if I speak in the tongues of men or angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and could fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all that I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I am what? I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when completeness comes, when Jesus returns in fullness to bring his kingdom, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Love is the weightier matter. Would you just turn to your neighbor and say, love is greater? All right, now turn to your other neighbor and say it like you mean it. Love is greater. Love is greater. Paul puts knowledge, love above knowledge, above even the knowledge to know all mysteries, which is crazy. I mean, just think about the leg up that knowledge gives you in life. There's things we would all love to know. I mean, how about you? What would you love to know if you could know anything, If we could know, how do they make Girl Scout cookies so addictive? And what does the fox say? And why am I so handsome? I don't know what you want to know. Maybe I want to know some of those things. You could probably come up with something better. But I mean, just think about what knowledge gives us, the advantage that knowledge has, right? To give us complete clarity around what to believe, to think and say and do in any given moment, to know that our course of action would be right. We could even make breakthrough scientific discoveries and advance human understanding of the universe. Knowledge might even help us understand some of the things that only God knows. And Paul says what? Love is greater. Thank you. In the Old Testament, think about this. God was so proud of Solomon, King Solomon. God said, pray for whatever you want. And Solomon prayed not for riches or fame like we would, but instead he prayed for wisdom. Wisdom is a step above knowledge. It's the highest value that Solomon could think of as a leader. And God was so pleased with him that he prayed for wisdom. But Paul says the prayer for love is greater. And somehow even, just think about what we just read, somehow even love is greater than the faith to move mountains. I don't see how the faith to move mountains, how faith that fully trusts in God could be second to anything. I have a feeling it's like choosing your favorite child here. But just to make, if the point's not clear already, Paul says love is greater. It's greater than all. It is the greatest. And this is really radical. This is not just sentiment. This is really radical stuff right here. And what becomes clear to us is that most of us, we don't really believe this. We don't really live by this because we choose rightness over love all day long. All day long. Just think about it. We absolutely believe that being right is more important than being kind. We think it's okay to be abrasive with people so long as we're speaking the truth, or so long as they have wronged us first, then it justifies it, right? We cheer people on for telling it like it is, even if they don't do so very compassionately. We think love is secondary. If you need further proof, just look at the people, the leaders that we elect. Dion talked about this last week, but the vast majority of us, we don't choose the person that's high on compassion or kindness. We choose people we agree with. We operate like the ends justify the means, that as long as this person will make decisions that I think are right, that it doesn't matter what kind of human they are. This is a reflection of what's going on in our own hearts, that we're okay with that. That this win at all costs thing, that even the most mature of us, we have that in here somewhere. If you've acted like winning is more important than character, if you've used truth as an excuse to justify being unkind, if your instinct is actually, instead of, I'm going to listen to you all the way through, if it bothers you to not get the credit, if you've gone tit for tat with others, eye for an eye, if someone comes to you with a hurt and your first response is to turn it back around on them and say, well, it's because you first did this. You're the real problem. If that describes you in any way, then join me in the prayer of the tax collector. Repeat after me: God, have mercy on me, a sinner. That's our prayer. And the amazing thing is that God does have mercy on us. God shows us that his love is greater. It's what took Jesus to the cross, and it defies human wisdom, he says. If we continue in 1 Corinthians 1, it says, the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise. The intelligence of the intelligent I will frustrate. Where is the wise person? Where is the teacher of the law? Where is the philosopher of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since the wisdom of God, in the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not know him, God was pleased through the foolishness of what was preached to save those who believe. Jews demand signs and Greeks look for wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and foolishness to the Gentiles, those of non-Jewish origin. But to those whom God has called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. You see, the Greeks, they love to debate truth. They love to pursue increased knowledge and wisdom. They were into philosophy. And in our modern culture, we've adopted a lot from the Greeks. We've taken a lot of their words and even their patterns of thinking. And just think about it. We have a deep desire to pursue knowledge in every area. And that's why we continue to face the temptation of Adam and Eve in the garden to grab a hold of the fruit of the tree of knowledge and to imagine that we're capable of peering into mysteries that only God can see. We have this tendency to think we're figuring our world out. In fact, we've kind of got it figured out. We know more about how it works than we don't know at this point, right? We know how to live a meaningful life. We've got our theology figured out. We know how God works. But the message of the cross, it levels all of our human wisdom, all of our false certainty. It lets us know we're not as right as we think that we are. We never could have imagined what God did with the cross. That at the cross, that would prove that we have a God who, in spite of all of our errors, would still love us. That God would die, that he could even die, that somehow a man would rise from the dead, and that reconciles us with God, our heavenly Father. We didn't imagine or plan any of that. God, in his wisdom, did that. That's the foolish message of the cross. It doesn't make sense to us, but it's the reality on the ground. And it demolishes the houses, the structures that we have built out of cards or on sand. It forces a confrontation between our wisdom and the wisdom of God. 18 months ago, I was sure that God needed my service at Renewal Church in Denver for years to come. I had planted that church in 2018. It was doing well, but I absolutely knew the health of the church depended on me staying put, staying the course. That church planners, it's a hard gig, and so you have to stick it out for like 5 years at least. Don't leave too soon, or it'll be a giant strategic and leadership mistake. And then God called me here. And it forced me to confront what I knew for certain. in this journey of life, there are times, there are moments where we're certain, we just know what the truth is. And then God, we have experiences that they don't meet our expectations. They don't sync with what we know to be true. And God directly challenges our certainty. And in those moments, when our certainty about a person or a decision or an opinion is called into question, we can settle for certain, we can double down on certainty, or we can say, God, I'm listening. Show me the higher values. Show me the better attitude. Show me where I'm off. The message of the cross, it confronts every false certainty that we have established, to leave it behind, to create a void that God can step in and reshape and reform our opinions, to be on the rock, to be on Jesus, to be established on the certainty of the message of the cross. Jesus is our true knowledge and wisdom. In Jesus, everything that I was certain of is shown to be foolish. Everything that I thought was foolish is shown to be certain, that God sent Jesus to fully embody his love for you and for me. That which I know in Jesus. You know, at Pathfinder, we talk a lot about embracing a God-directed journey in life. And that means valuing righteousness, the righteousness of Jesus, over our rightness. Being able to lay down our rightnesses, to take up the righteousness of Jesus that he gives to us. That this idea of desiring to be in a right relationship with God is more important than showing everybody else how right we are. Because God's ultimate, highest goal for us is not that we would know all, not that we could defend every attack on truth, or that we would fathom all mysteries. I mean, that's God's job. God's highest goal for us is to embrace a God-directed journey of being transformed to the likeness of Jesus in love. The end of faith is not knowledge. The end is transformation. That's the goal, to be like Jesus. Rightness prohibits transformation, because rightness says build on your own self-identity, build on your own wisdom. But transformation says build on Jesus, become fools for love like him. In 1 Corinthians 13, the key is love. We read this a minute ago, but just look at the key that to all of these values. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast. Love is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking. Love is not easily angered. Love keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Love always protects, always trusts, always hopes. Love always perseveres. Love never fails. Love is the key to all the other higher values of God. It's the defining fruit of faith. It's the key to a more meaningful life. It's the key to a more faithful posture toward others. It opens up so much to us, the ability to become people of character and integrity, to be people of strength with humility. And when you put truth first in the driver's seat, love takes a back seat. But when you put love in the driver's seat, truth rides shotgun. It comes right along with. And we get the certainty around the clear truths of Scripture and how God has shown his love to us. And yet, God keeps us teachable and curious and willing to listen to the needs of others around us, and to put our need to be right aside and to just have compassion. To no longer desire just to win the argument, but to preserve the relationship, to invest in what lasts. Because if we learned anything from 1 Corinthians 13, it's that some things won't last. Where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. But what remains? Love. Love remains. You see, knowledge will pass away. Human wisdom has an expiration date, a shelf life, right? Love remains. It's the most important value. And that's hard for me to say as a struggling rightness addict. And it's hard for us as the people of God to embrace too. To try to be both and people of truth and love. We've been trying to do this, but just like we talked about with all these denominations, it just goes to show you that when push comes to shove and we're trying to figure out, is it better to be right or to keep working together, that we put truth above all else and we fracture. When push comes to shove, we put truth above unity. And I value truth. I'm a truth teller, so I get it. I'm not entirely sure what I would do differently to solve it because truth matters, but I know Jesus wouldn't be okay with choosing between the two. Because Jesus, before his crucifixion, he prayed this prayer for us. Father, may they be one as we are one. One in faith, one in love, one in spirit on this God-directed journey of transformation. And you may hear voices saying, dismiss this stuff. It's not how the world works. It's not realistic. Love, all that, it's just soft, right? Don't change what you're doing. Keep fighting. Keep saying, posting, doing whatever you're doing. Don't let anyone tell you you're wrong. That's the fear of change talking. And divisiveness is not a fruit of faith. Self-rightness, not a mark of the Spirit. Don't let certainty push away the higher values. Build on the love of Jesus. And when everybody else is obsessed with being right and winning, may we be obsessed with love. With saying, I'm for you because Jesus is for me. Actually, he's for us. And I don't know some things. There's a lot that I don't know, but I know Jesus, and I know that his love is greater. God, we thank you that this is a place we can go in which to encounter your love. Pure love for us, that regardless of how wrong or how right we are, when we gather here, we know that in Jesus, Lord, you look upon us with your full favor. That in this place, we know that we are valued and cared for because we're created in your image and you just love us. God, this week as we go forward, show us the moments where we're putting rightness in front of love, when we're elevating that above everything else, and show us, teach us in our spirit when to lean in and to be intentional about being more like Jesus. Give us a right mind and a right heart to know when we have to tear down and rebuild on what is certain. To be certain about the right things. And it all starts with you, God. Thank you for loving us. May we preserve the unity of the body. May we be about us as we glorify you and share your message of hope with the world. In Jesus' name, amen.